Today I'd like to give you an example of a descriptive essay that we're going to do in our class here in the next few weeks. The descriptive essay, it should be partially connotative and denotative descriptions. And you need to think of this as that lost art that we've talked about. We said that storytelling is really a lost art, just like listening. And with a story, telling a story, you want to tell the story and paint the pictures for the reader. For example, this is a story that I think of something that happened to me whenever I was a young child, and every winter I always think of this particular incident. Whenever I was growing up and I was in grade school, I lived on this steep hill in Ashland, and it was one of those hills, and back in the 1970s they didn't grade all the snow off of the side streets in the wintertime, really like they do today. And it seemed like every time we had a large snow, a lot of people in their four-wheel drives would always try to test our hill, and they would make it up about a third of the way, and they would slide on back down to the bottom. Well, in the mid to late 70s, I was in about, I guess, fourth grade or so, fifth grade, and we had a large snow, and it had snowed for 4 or 5 days straight, it seemed like. And they even canceled school, which they very seldomly canceled school back. The way it was just amazing how the snow would weight some of the evergreens down. As I was walking up the top of the hill, I looked over at my neighbor's yard, and every Christmas he always decorated his evergreen tree with those large colored light bulbs. They're kind of hard to find now. If you can find them, they're kind of nostalgic light bulbs, but these were the red and the blue and the green, and he had those wrapped around that tree, and there was snow on top of the evergreen leaves and the branches, and there was so much snow that the leaves and the branches were weighed down. As I looked at those branches and I looked at those lights, we knew it was only 2 weeks until Christmas was coming. And then I started looking at all the houses around it. I noticed that as the sun was going down and it was starting to get dark, all the lights inside the houses, the families had their kitchen lights and the living room lights on. And I kept standing there thinking, why don't these adults want to come out and sleigh ride? They don't understand the fun that they're missing. Why do they want to be inside a stuffy old house when they could be outside playing? And I kind of shook it off, thinking, well, I guess when you're older, like they are, you don't want to have fun anymore. And as I started walking up that street, I could hear the snow as it crunched underneath my feet. And the street lights were coming out at this time. And the way the crystals in the snow, the snowflakes, bounced off the light, you could see they looked like diamonds. And I would watch the snow, and as the snow would play around with the light, sometimes the snow even looked blue. And I continued to walk up the street, and you could hear the snow crunching underneath your feet, and now you could see how slick the roadway was, since we'd sprayed water on there, and we had been sleigh riding for 2 days. Now you could see the reflection of the streetlight on that ice that we had created. And as we got ready to go down the hill one more time, I heard her mom yell for me to go to my house and for my cousins to go to their house. And this was back in the time when you could stay out late at night and play, and you didn't have any fear. So we kind of parted our separate ways and told each other, we'll see you tomorrow. And as I walked into the house, you didn't realize how cold you were until you were in a warm house. And I remember as I took off my jacket and my shirt, even some of the snow would then fall on your bare skin, and you realized how cold the snow was. And usually in the wintertime and kind of close to Christmas, this was the first time that my mom would actually fix homemade hot chocolate. She usually did this once, maybe twice out of the year, and it was always around Christmas time. And she had a big kettle that she had on the stove. In the kettle, she would, I guess, use cocoa and sugar, and she had seemed like a full pot full of hot chocolate. She had a big ladle that she would ladle it out for me in a cup. And whenever I drank that hot chocolate, I just remember that heat and that warmth as it hit my mouth and went down my throat and into my stomach. And then again, you realized, my goodness, I was a lot colder than I thought. And you go to bed and you couldn't wait to get back up the next day to go back out sleigh riding. When you're a kid, you could play outside all day and you just didn't seem to get cold. But one of the worst sounds that you could ever hear, and this happened that very next day, when I was asleep, I could hear the sound of the dump truck with the blade on it. And as soon as I heard that dump truck scraping off the snow, I jumped out of the bed and I took off running to the front door, and I watched as that dump truck started going down the hill. And not only did it scrape all of our ice and our snow off, then it threw salt on the road. And it didn't take but a few hours, once the sun came out, that everything that we had worked for the last 3 to 4 days was destroyed. But for some reason, even to this day, whenever I look at a picture and see a picture like what you're looking at on the screen, a picture of a tree with snow covered on it, and I see the old-fashioned light bulbs, or I see a house with lights on the inside of that house as the snow is glistening in the evening, I always go back to that one day in the 70s. It's a day I'll never, ever forget. Now, if you listen to that story, I tried to paint a picture, connotative and denotative. In our society, it's hard to describe things without showing pictures. But in this paper that I want you to write, I want you to assume that I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Now, you don't have to go into too much detail or use too many adjectives. Just set the picture for me. Tell me a little bit about your feelings of this event. And if there's an important area that you need to describe, you can talk a little bit about it. But don't get hung up on the details. And take this little essay serious. I want you to look at your grammar, and I want you to pay special attention to your spelling. But the main core of this essay is, how can you describe, how can you encode a story precisely and accurately? If you have any questions,